Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have another video for the Blair Witch films. This is the final one, the third film in general, the second sequel, whatever. They came out in 2016. It's about an hour and a half long, and it's directed and kind of touched upon script-wise by Adam Wingard, of all people, who had done the things that I love, like You're Next, Godzilla vs. Kong. I haven't seen the new Godzilla x Kong New Empire movie that he made, but he made that as well. I think the screenwriter for that as well is the one who wrote this, and this screenwriter had also worked on a lot of Adam Wingard stuff too. I'm a big fan of Adam Wingard. He also did The Guest with Dan Stevens, and a lot of people, in my opinion, really overhype it, but most people seem to really love it. It was kind of one of those 80s throwback films. We started getting around the time of You're Next and Stranger Things when it came out. Anyway, this film is simply called Blair Witch, and again, it's a 2016 film, about an hour and 30 minutes, somewhere in there, so it doesn't stay around too long. This is more traditional to that original 1999 film. It's a found footage movie. It has ties to that film, like, for example, our sort of semi-main character, the subject of the documentary being filmed here, is the brother of Heather from the original film. He's believed most of his life, if not his whole life, since that happened like 16, 14 years, whatever, before this movie, that Heather may still be alive out in the woods. And he wants to make the effort to go out to old Burkittsville, which used to be called Blair, to look for his sister. And he takes like a camera crew, well, not a camera crew, it's really his best friend, that guy's girlfriend, and this chick that he recently became friends with, who I think she's like a documentary filmmaker or something, and she wants to make this documentary we're watching about this young man trying to go find Heather, his sister. And they go out in the woods, and first and foremost, before they get to the woods, they meet this like sketchy meth head, pothead couple who are very weird. They say that they want to go along with the team out into the woods camping and stuff because they have to show these folks where they got the DV tapes from the original Blair Witch film situation, I think is what they said. But anyway, they go out in the woods, all of them, what's the math on that? 6 people? Yeah. They go out there together, and some supernatural things begin to happen. This movie is probably one of the weakest Adam Wingard films. It's not a good movie, per se. I've said in numerous previous videos about Blair Witch 1 and 2 that I think I like parts of this more than anything in the franchise, and I still kind of stand by that, especially the final 15-20 minutes. It doesn't have great characters. Even the tie into the original Heather character with this brother, not really crazy about him, not really crazy about not having some great, almost 17 years later twists for this, which I think could have been really cool. There's some expansion just a tad bit on Blair Witch lore, which the hardcore Blair Witch fans out there I think would really appreciate about this movie, despite it being like very tiny details, not much, but a little bit. Things involving like the stickmen. Thought that was cool. One of the best scares in the film is full of that. Let me tell you this too, this movie is filled from beginning to end with jump scares. That is so not like Adam Wingard to do that. He didn't do that in You're Next, he doesn't do that in the Godzilla films. Despite them not being traditional horror, they're still creature features and stuff. He's great as a filmmaker. I really love him and I really respect him. This is a great example of a movie that feels like, to me, a lot of studio interference. It has a respect for the OG Blair Witch film. It doesn't really reference part 2 at all, which is probably for the best. But this movie's trying to be more for the audience of the original film, whilst also having too many modern day things. For example, they have a drone in the movie. I hate the drone thing and how commonly utilized it is in this film. I understand for when this takes place, that would have been a thing that a documentary filmmaker would have used to get sky shots and drone shots, obviously, and so on and so on. That makes sense. But it's when you constantly have scenes of characters climbing in trees to try to get the damn thing that I think that's nuts. I think that really kind of ruins the pacing and makes it a little choppy for this movie. It doesn't really work. Despite the cool poster, despite some of the cool things like the stickmen stuff I talked about, and despite the interesting twist, semi-twist if you can call it that, with these two hickey meth head characters that come along with our cast, that's really all it has going for it. The best performance in the film is probably the main chick that is the filmmaker, and I also really like the best friend character. I think he's really good in here. No one's really bad per se, Everybody does their little role okay, but there's not, again, a bunch of character development. Even for this documentary filmmaker chick who is making this film, there's not really a whole lot of character stuff, which is debatable. I would say at the end of the day, Blair Witch 2016 is very clearly a straight-out, all-in-all remake of the original Blair Witch film without calling itself that. It's not as simple as being called a reboot. It's very clear to me that it is a remake, per se. And every facet of that, the modernization of it, the brother being like 16 years younger than Heather, 14 years, whatever, now going out to go find her, it just feels off a lot of the time. A lot of the stuff timeline-wise feels weird, but I do love some of the really cool things Adam Wingard and his writer had for this film, like a lot of the utilization of time displacement, and the woods themselves. Some of the interesting getting lost in the woods stuff I thought was cool. After watching these three films back-to-back, I think I kind of submit to the idea that the original is probably the best, which for a long time, for people who don't understand and who think that's probably the obvious train of thought anyway, people like myself were disappointed with the original film. Wanted to see the witch, that kind of thing, which is kind of debatable about whether they did something with that in this film or not. We can all talk about it for circles, for ages. Kind of depends on what your taste is, what you like about Blair Witch, what you hate about Blair Witch, if you're a fan, if you're not a fan. But for me, this film fixed a lot of things that I hate about the series, but I do submit to what I was going to say a moment ago, that the OG movie is probably the best, at the end of the day, out of all three films. Despite my low rating of all three, especially when I finish up this review, I think this is better than 2, but not as close as to the atmosphere, that black and white nature in my weird art house heart of a way of looking at the original film and enjoying that part of that movie. Watching these three in a marathon, I think the OG is probably the best of the three, but not by much. Not by much. There are certain things I would have loved to have seen out of that film. It has a reputation that, personally, I don't think Blair Witch in general has aged well. Never needed to be a franchise, just like The Strangers. The Strangers just had a third film come out. It doesn't need to be a franchise. We're about to get 2 more of that. So, I don't know. But Blair Witch is, it's an okay film. It's well shot in some respects. I heard if you saw this movie in theaters that the surround sound design was incredible. I don't know how true that is, because watching it yesterday, I don't feel that way. Not in a home situation, I don't. I don't have all the surround sound bar shit that a lot of people do. I don't want all that. But I feel like it's not as well done at home as it could have been at the theater for experience. It doesn't really have any CGI. I thought that was pretty cool. There's a lot of practical in-camera stuff, and that stuff looks good. One scene involving a tent that I thought was horrific. It scared me to death the first time I saw this movie. Scared me this time a little bit too, because I actually forgot about it. The discussion on whether we see the witch or not in this movie is pretty interesting in the fan base. I think a lot of people like to discuss that, and frankly, that was the highlight of the movie for me. This film is not only kind of like a small remake of the original film, but it's also like trying to fix the issues that people who hate the original Blair Witch complained about in this movie. And I get it, but I don't think it was a good idea. I think Adam Wingard, if I had to bet, I think the studios kind of wrecked his movie, whether it be the inclusion of the constant drone shot stuff, which, again, logically makes sense for a modern-day filmmaking chick like the main character girl that I would argue is our main character instead of the brother of Heather. I get why those things are used here. I don't really like them. I kind of wish this film had taken place closer to the original film and had done what Blumhouse would do nowadays, that I suspect they'll do with the new Blair Witch films they're putting out possibly next year or the year after, where they'll probably bring back Mike and Heather and Josh and all of them. I suspect that this film was not able to do that because of a studio interference thing, maybe an Adam Wingard idea, I don't know. But Blair Witch 2016 is kind of a mess. It's not a great flick, like I said. It's probably the second of the three compared to the original and the sequel, but it ain't great. It's not great, it's really not amazing or anything. Do I think it's worth checking out if you're not a fan of Blair Witch, like the original 2 movies and stuff? Not really. I don't really think it fixes too much. I have it in my collection because I love the last 15-20 minutes of the film, and frankly, you could probably watch that last 15-20 minutes on film, or of the film, on YouTube if you take some time and check it out. It's pretty scary stuff, man. Very claustrophobic stuff that I love. I think is really well done and aged the best compared to anything in Blair Witch. But the rest of the movie before that last 15-20 minutes is really knuckle-dragging, let's say. It's not a great film. I don't think I'd call it a good movie either, but it's one of the weakest Adam Wingard films, and I don't want to seem like a jerk for saying that, because I love his work. But anyway, Blair Witch 2016, not a big recommendation for me. It has its moments that are really good, and it has some alright things, and it has a lot of messy, bad crap in it. And I'm a found footage fan. In case this happens to be the first video you ever come across from my channel, I'm a fan of found footage, a big fan of found footage. And I actively seek it out, unlike people who just review movies every week that come to theaters. They see a new found footage horror film that comes up into the theater and they're rolling their eyes, not wanting to see it because it's found footage. That's not me. I like found footage. I just don't like Blair Witch in general. I like the urban legend nature of it. I hate the fact that it's not utilized enough in any of the movies, frankly. I don't know. I don't know what I think about the new Blumhouse films and stuff either coming out, or what they could do with that, but hopefully it's good. I doubt it. It is Blumhouse. But hopefully it's good. They bring out some good stuff every once in a while. If I had to rate Blair Witch 2016 on a 5-star basis, I would probably give this about a 2 out of 5 stars. So about the same thing I gave the previous 2 films for very different reasons than those 2 movies. But it's got some cool stuff in it. That last 15-20 minutes of this movie really saves this film, because otherwise it's kind of a little dull and filled with jump scares. So it kind of ruins the kind of atmosphere you could have for this film, and that's why I believe there was a lot of studio interference with this movie. I feel like this was going to be a very quiet, subtle film, kind of like the original film. Maybe a lot of character psychological horror and stuff, a lot of distrust amongst the group. And there is a little bit of that, but not enough, I think. This could have been interesting. It's not how it turned out. Aside from that ending chapter, that's it. So hopefully the next films are more impressive. And again, maybe if I was a bigger Blair Witch guy, I would love and appreciate this more. I've heard of people on YouTube that I watch a lot, like Sinister Cinema Reviews, seeing this film the first time, not liking it, watching it multiple times later on, and really loving it as a Blair Witch hardcore fan like he is. He's read books and comics and everything else. I am not going to do all that. But if you're that type, maybe you'll love and appreciate this more. Anyway, what do you think about Blair Witch 2016, and what do you think about the general franchise in total? I'd love to hear everything you have to say about it down in the comments section down below. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Catch you later, and goodbye.